Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new deck for you, and just as a quick heads up, this is not a budget deck, although I do think it should be fairly easy to find substitutes for those expensive cards. But before that, just a quick reminder to please click like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. We're well on our way to 1 million subscribers, and every single click counts. And today's Commander deck list is going to be focused around Will, Scion of Peace. For 1 colorless, 1 white, and 1 blue, it's a legendary creature human wizard 2/4 with vigilance, and tap spells you cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gained this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So Will has garnered significantly less attention than his sister Rowan, and I can see why. Black and red have a lot more X spells that can allow you to finish off the game, such as Exsanguinate and things of that nature, whereas blue and white offer more defensive kind of things, which makes sense if you think about it. You're going to be gaining some life, you're going to be drawing some cards, but it's a little bit harder to leverage that into a win. Notice that I said harder, but not impossible. We have got quite a few alternate win conditions in this deck, and I still think Will can be a very powerful commander, particularly since gaining life is basically what Azorius is built for. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in this deck, just gaining a bunch of life and then leveraging that life gain into multiple avenues to win the game. One of my favorite things about this deck is that it has multiple alternate win cons, so it's very nice to have all those different options, and it means that we have a lot of plans in case something goes wrong. Anyway, without further ado, let's get started with Angel of Destiny. This is the first one of our alternate win cons. It can only eliminate 1 player at a time, but since we're gaining so much life, it should be fairly easy to have at least 15 more than our starting life total, at which point this just kills a player each turn. Next up we have Angel of Vitality, which is going to increase all of our life gain by 1. That's incredibly powerful, and it's a decent beater on its own. Archangel of Thune is the next card on our list, and this is a very powerful one because it can allow us to transition into a more beatdown kind of style if we are really desperate and we need to. It's nice to have that option. Celestine the Living Saint is great for recurring creatures from the graveyard. We're going to be getting so much life that this should be able to bring back any creature every turn. This is very, very strong. Chakram Retriever is one of the best cards in the deck, surprisingly, and that's because we want to be casting cards during our turn anyway, and Will has an activated ability. That means that if we have a way to refill our hand, and spoiler, this deck contains a lot of card draw, then this can really go off. You basically gain a bunch of life, tap Will, play something, untap Will with Chakram Retriever, then tap him again to get even more of a discount for your next spell, and as long as you have cards in hand, then you can just keep doing this because things are going to be so cheap to play. You can really go off. Cloud Blazer is obviously always a great card, but in this deck where we care about the life gain, it's even better than normal. Daxos Blessed by the Sun is going to gain us a little bit of life whenever a creature enters the battlefield under our control, and it's a decent blocker as well. Dream Trawler is a really annoying card that can be very strong in this deck because we're going to be drawing a lot of cards, which means that this is going to get a huge buff, which then means that it's going to be a huge life linking creature, which works very well with Will. And if they try to kill this with spot removal, it's quite easy to protect it as long as we have a hand that we're willing to discard, and we should have a fairly large hand with this deck. So this, I think, is going to be one of the best cards in the deck. Drugstore Reaver is another card that can really go off if left unanswered because we're going to be getting a lot of life, and then that's going to translate into a lot of cards. Belidus Sovereign is another of our alternate win cons. This one is a classic commander card that has fallen out of favor a little bit lately, but in this deck it should be very easy to have at least 40 or more life, so if our opponents don't have removal for this immediately, then we're gonna just win the game. Goldforged Thopterix is really good at protecting our legendary creatures, but it also comes with a little bit of lifelink, which is always welcome. Heliod Suncrown can again allow us to transition into a beatdown plan by buffing our creatures up every time we gain life. Quain Itinerant Meddler is an incredibly solid card in this deck because it's going to do 2 things that we really want: gaining life and drawing cards, and we don't really care that much if our opponents do it anyway, so it's just all upside for us. Nyx Fleece Ram is a decent blocker that's also going to gain us a life every turn. That's something invaluable in this deck. I also love the art on this card. It's absolutely awesome. Rock's Faithmender is a really powerful effect in a life gain deck, so it's an auto include here. Serra Ascendant is going to come down as a 6/6 lifelinker most of the time, which is incredibly powerful for 1 mana, and gaining us 6 life a turn just works so well with Will. Shabraz the Sky Shark is a powerful card in the deck that can gain life while growing itself, but do be careful because it goes infinite with Drugstore Reaver, and not in a good way. It's a loop that you can't stop, so you basically have to find a way to remove one or the other or you will deck yourself. Soul Warden is going to gain us a bunch of life. Obviously, we're most interested in doing this during our turn so that it works with will, but it is still nice to gain life when our opponent's creatures enter too. Suture Priest is almost as good as Soul Warden. It's a little bit more expensive and it only works on our own creatures, but that's all we want really in this deck. And then it randomly hoses opposing token decks, which is nice too. The Gaffer should draw us a card almost every single turn with all of the life we're gaining. And Valkyrie Harbinger is a slow card that can nevertheless finish off the game if given enough time by pumping out 4/4 angels. For instance, we have Beacon of Immortality, which is a very powerful effect in a deck with this much life gain. We can obviously take this out if we're playing in a meta where everybody is playing combo decks that don't care about life total, but if you're in a battle cruiser meta like my own, this can be very strong. Blue Sun Zenith is a great way to draw cards, but it's also crucially one of the ways we can finish the game by forcing our opponents to draw a bunch of cards and deck themselves if we have enough of a discount from will. Drown in Dreams is another way to finish off the game, particularly if we have will out, because we can kill two players at once by forcing one to deck themselves and the other one to mill themselves to death. Faithful Mending is very powerful in this deck because it's going to be gaining us life. It's nice that we get some card selection that we can recur later on, but it's mostly just the life gain that's really pulling a lot of weight here. Heliod's Intervention is a card that is always good in Commander, but it's almost always used just for the artifact and enchantment destruction. In this deck, the gain life option is a very real possibility if we really want to start to get our combos going with will. Light of Hope is a card that again usually doesn't see much play because it's a bit too narrow. It only destroys one enchantment for 1 mana. The other two modes are basically irrelevant. However, in this deck, the gain 4 life mode can actually be useful, so it's good to have that choice. Pull for Tomorrow is a very powerful effect with will's discount, and it's going to allow us to refill our hand very nicely. Sphinx's Revelation is similarly very good with will, and it even gains us some life, so we can get the ball rolling with this in a pinch too. And Union of the Third Path is a very interesting card that normally isn't very good in Commander, but in this deck where we have such a big hand size, this can gain us a ton of life and refill our hand by 1 whilst getting our discount train started. For sorceries, we've got Approach of the Second Sun. This is another alternate win condition, and it also doubles up as life gain in a pinch, so very solid in the deck. Brain Geyser is another way we can opt to finish the game by forcing one of our opponents to draw a bunch of cards. It can also be used to refill our hand if we need it to. Finale of Revelation is a card that excels in this deck. Normally we're never going to be able to cast it for X equals 10, but when you have such a big discount with will, it's very feasible to do so, and at that point it's very hard to not see us winning the game because we're going to get to draw 10 cards, untap 5 lands, and have no maximum hand size and just really go off. Seagate Restoration is similarly great in this deck because it's already a very good card that gets so much better when you can pay it for just 3 mana. Stormherd is very powerful when you can get it off for just 2 mana, and in this deck we can actually play it very early with the right draw. We can potentially play it on turn 4 or turn 5, at which point getting like 40 1/1 flyers can be really powerful. Time Stretch is obviously very good when you get a huge discount on it. Tanking 2 extra turns means we should be able to finish the game. And White Sun Zenith is a very nice and flexible card that can either be used as a desperation life gain option, but it can also just be used after we've activated Will to wipe the board. And since Will's discount stays around even if he's dead, we can just keep comboing off that turn on an empty board. For artifacts, we have Aetherflux Reservoir, which is a great finisher in Commander, and in a deck that's gaining this much life and that can chain together as many spells as this deck can, it's very strong. Alamaret's Archive is going to double up our life gain and card draws, so it's hard to imagine a better fit for this deck. Ivory Tower is going to gain us a lot of life every turn since this deck is going to have very full hands. Patriarch's Seal works very well with Will since he has an activated ability that we can reuse. Pristine Talisman is a mana rock that is excellent for this deck since we really care about gaining life. The One Ring is one of the most powerful cards in Commander, and it's particularly good in this deck with all the life gain we're doing. It's going to be very trivial to take some life from this, and we're going to always have a full hand, which is just so strong. Finally, Venser's Journal is great because not having a maximum hand size is something that we really care about in this deck. We've got a lot of effects that are going to count our hand size, and then it's also going to gain us a ton of life every turn. For enchantments, we have Blind Obedience, which is fantastic in this deck. Extort is a great fit if you're in a 4-player game because you're going to be gaining 3 life for each 1 mana you spend, and with Will that translates to a 3 mana discount for the rest of your turn. Very strong. Cleric class is going to allow us to gain extra life with all of our life gain effects, which is obviously fantastic, and then it can also enable a kind of beatdown effect by being similar to Heliod's Suncrown and allowing us to put counters on our creatures whenever we gain life. For lands, we've got Kabira Crossroads, which gains us 2 life when it comes into play. Pretty straightforward. Minamo School at Water's Edge is going to allow us to use Will's ability twice per turn. Minas Tirith should be fairly easy to keep turned on since Will has Vigilance, and it's going to draw some extra cards in the mid game. Radiant Fountain Fountain is basically a colorless version of Kabira Crossroads. Reliquary Tower is going to make sure we have a full grip at all times. Rivendell can give us some card selection late on in the game when we have some spare mana. And Seraph Sanctuary is going to gain us a life when it comes into play. And we have a couple of angels in the deck, so it can gain us some extra life here or there. So there you have it. This has been our Will Scion of Peace deck tech. What do you think about this one? I really enjoy the fact that this deck has a lot of different ways to close out the game, so that it means you're never going to be without a plan or without an alternate option to steal a win. Do you like the way this deck was built? Are there any cards that you would add or any cards that you think I shouldn't have included? Let me know in the comment section below.
And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care.
Woo!